Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Henderson Equipment. If you guys watched my previous video, you saw that I split the Ford 2110 in half. So let's move on to fixing this tractor. So why did I split this thing in half? I split this in half because if you guys were watching any previous videos, you would know that my engine was running, but as I shifted it into gear, I wasn't going anywhere, and that is a problem. So we had to diagnose whether the problem was within the transmission or the clutch pack itself. We diagnosed that there was no issues with the transmission, so we have to dive into the clutch pack. As your engine rotates, so as she's rotating, like so, it is creating power, and your clutch here, this is rotating and turning around your input shaft, which goes directly to your transmission. As you apply pressure to your clutch, the actual clutch mechanism itself allows the disc to move and allowing you to shift into a gear. What we were seeing though is that no matter what gear we were shifted into, we were getting no power to the transmission. My suspicion is we probably blew the hell out of a clutch disc. The reason why I'm suspecting that is because of all the shit that is stuck inside the bell housing here. I think I'm just going to use my red Solo cup. Woo! Look at all this shit. So I will say, signs are looking strong that we blew a clutch disc apart, and we probably blew it apart because we were leaking fluid from the transmission into the clutch itself. So this is a dry clutch system. It is not supposed to be wet, and you can see there's a ton of shit in here. Usually what happens is the seal behind the transmission to the input shaft failed, and you got to replace it. So we're gonna have to dive into that because all this wetness should not be here. I'm gonna have to brake clean and try to get this all dried out. Alright crew, so I pulled up an exploded diagram here to take a look at the components for the Ford 2110 clutch system. So as I move up, scroll in, this is the clutch pack itself, and then this is one of the two clutch discs. So this is the clutch disc that I believe probably blew it apart. I think this thing is totally trashed. But we'll see once we pull the clutch plate off. However, once we pull the clutch plate off, we'll be able to see what this clutch looks like as well, this clutch plate. So we'll take that apart and see what's going on there. But the reason I think the clutch failed is because of all the oil it saw. So taking a look here, this 6 here, this is actually your throwout bearing. That's what applies pressure to the clutch pack and allows you to change your gears. 7 is a hub assembly, so the bearing kind of just rides on this. And these ears here are what your clutch fork applies pressure to. So when you're stepping on the clutch itself, the ears spring forward, applying pressure to the clutch pack itself. Now, what I really want to look at up here is this guy here. So this is, they call it a retainer, but it's really your input shaft retainer, if that makes sense. So the input shaft from the transmission runs through here, through this. This is a bearing. It goes through this bearing. Then you have this oil seal, which prevents oil from the transmission shaft going through here and dripping in. And then here you have a gasket. Now, I really hope this gasket is inside this part of the bell housing, not between the bell housing and the transmission, but it's looking like this is in between the bell housing and the transmission itself. So I might be screwed, and I might have to remove this whole bell housing or separate the bell housing from the transmission. Yeah, so I wanted to show you guys this. It's always helpful to look at exploded diagrams, and let's get back to work. Let's pull this off. These look like 14s, but let's see. They are not 14s. Let's see if they are 13s. They're 13s. So I'm going to start taking the bolts off of the bottom first, and then I'll slide my knee under here and do the top one so I can catch it, because this thing is freaking heavy. Okay. All right. All right, so I'm flipping this around so you guys can see this. So this is the clutch disc itself, and the clutch disc is covered in oil. And this is like your consumable part, and there is nothing left of the clutch disc. So there's supposed to be material here. Without material here, this thing is going to do absolutely nothing, and it's just going to spin freely. So let's dive into this clutch here. Now, the way these work is you have these rockers, and these rockers are normally compressed, and they're compressed because these are bolted through to the flywheel. But these little bolts here, the throwout bearing goes on, and then this pushes on the springs within the clutch, and then it allows this disc here to move freely. So because these are released, there's a lot of pressure on this disc, and I can't move this. So what I want to do is disassemble this clutch just to make sure that this internal clutch disc is in good shape. If it is not in good shape, then I'm going to have to order a replacement disc for the internal one as well. I'm hoping it's in good shape because it says remanufactured, and you know, the tractor's only got 2,500 hours on it, so I have to assume they put this on relatively recently. But because it's been subject to oil, it could be pretty badly deteriorated. So let's dive into it and see what's going on. So it's holding these two cast iron clutch plates together are these rocker arms. So what we're going to have to do is I'm going to need to disassemble the 3 rocker arms so I can take this top plate off. How do you do that? I'm going to show you. So the clutches on these tractors are insane, to say the least. And what you're going to need is a good C-clamp. So I'm tightening up on my C-clamp, and what I want you guys to watch is watch this arm. As I tighten up on this arm, it's going to depress. See how it's depressing? Just like that. See how this is loose now? That's going to allow me to push this bolt down. Look, it already wants to go. So let's do it. I'm going to take this pin out. Pin, washer, or I should say, cotter pin, washer, and pin. Put that there. Now let's take this and rock it down. Now I'm going to loosen this up. I'm going to repeat the process on these 2 sides. This is the last bolt. Swing this arm down. Okay. So now both arms are down. Piece of rubber gasket was in that one. I don't know what that's about. So now I'm going to slowly loosen. Nice. All right. I'm going to pull. Cool. So the clutch comes with a dowel pin here and a dowel pin up top here, and they do want this put in a certain location. Reminder, this thing is balanced accordingly too. Let's pull off. We've got a wavy spring that looks good. Okay. Wavy spring. Okay. Yeah, you see the oil in there? This is supposed to be dry. So we're going to have to clean that up. And then this is our actual clutch disc itself. Seems fine. Has a lot of life on it. But it's been hit with oil, so I'm a little worried about that. Let me clean this up. Yeah, so this feels good. It's been machined. So this is a double acting clutch. And let me put everything to the side in halves. That way I know what I'm doing when I put it back together. So that's one half. And let's break this. It's another half. Ooh, look at the sludge in there. I'm glad I... Look at that. Nice. Glad we took that apart. So we gotta clean that. Coincidentally enough, this is the exact same clutch that's on my father's Ford. And it's a different size tractor. So these things are massive and heavy, and it's nice that they use the same parts for both of them. So I really don't see anything crazy wrong here. Even the clutch disc itself looked pretty good. I don't see any missing parts or components. I'm going to look to see what it costs to get a new clutch disc. And we'll probably go from there. I don't go, no offense Ford or New Holland, I don't go to New Holland for the clutch disc because they're just crazy money. So I got this nice little, I call it an Amish outfit, but it's a Mennonite outfit out in Pennsylvania. And they recondition a lot of these. So I'm going to call them, see what the price is. I'm probably going to end up replacing this clutch disc anyway. And then go from there. So a couple days ago, I ripped this clutch apart. I called Ford to get replacement parts. They wanted $800 in parts, which is absurd. And just wild. So I called my Amish homies, and they took care of me. And I got a brand new PTO disc and a clutch disc for like $125. I've been using a lot of brake clean, like a shitload. Trying to get as much oil as possible off. You're gonna get like some rust and stuff because remember this is cast, but you want to get this as clean as possible. And these need to be oriented in a certain direction, like they're installed in a specific pattern, so that way you can't, you don't screw it up. It's balanced. So we got our backing plate here, and really the clutch disc sits underneath here. But let's put our spring in, and let's put our base back in. Tight fit. Gotta double check to make sure the spring didn't move, and it didn't. So that is good. My boy Miggs gave me this knife. Appreciate it, man. Let's see what these clutch discs look like. These are nice. So, man, these are real nice. Hell yeah. So, if you guys can take a look here, and hopefully you can see, but you see the smaller diameter, that is the primary input shaft to the transmission. And then here, the bigger spline groove here, this is for the input shaft to the PTO. So pretty much the PTO disc sits inside the clutch pack itself, And this one sits against the flywheel and the clutch pack of the tractor. So taking a look at the two different PTO discs here, these big pads here, this is an OEM Ford one. This is obviously the aftermarket one. This has pretty much multiple small pads, so it's all small pads cut up. I think they did that to like for air and to keep things cool, but I like the bigger pads personally, but we'll see. Maybe this one will work better, maybe it'll last longer, but you can tell that this is not an OEM Ford where this one is. Which I'm good with because, said, I'm not paying $500 per disc. Stupid. Put that there. Put this here. Now these ears are going to stick out on top of where the bolts are. That's their stopping point. You can adjust that if need be, but this should work just fine. Okay. Have our next spring plate. And and you want to line up your dowel pins. All right, so we're not looking too bad. So I'm just going to put these bolts in here. Yes, they're not going to do anything, but they're just going to help me for trying to get this thing as centered as possible. And the bolts are going in pretty good. And you can see I'm like moving this thing into its proper orientation. Nice. So those bolts will help keep me lined up. And I just want to make sure that I'm seeing like an even amount, and I'm not. I got to crank the PTO disc north a little bit. Moving that up a little bit, and I'm just going to love tap this thing. There we go. Just looking to make sure the gap's the same. Everything's looking pretty even to me, so I like where that's landed. So now I'm going to put pressure on it, and I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to swing 2 hinges here, throw in the bolts, and make sure it compresses okay. All right. Take this other clamp, do the same thing. So now I'm applying on the other side, just on the outer edge. And so I'm cranking these 2 down until the rocker sits in the arm and it's got some wiggle room. And like that, she's in. So that's 1. So let's try to do the back one. We got plenty of clearance, so that's good. Okay. So now I'm going to loosen up this clamp, swing it over here, nice, tighten it back up, and make sure this one fits. Okay, now that all the pins are in, I can loosen these up. So that's in. I'm going to put the clutch plate on. Okay, clutch plate is on. All right, I'm going to install this. Loosen this up. Okay, let's go down and around. Just a little bit. These are hard to line up sometimes, so. Like this one doesn't want to line up. So you have to get it, catch them with your finger, and I think I got it. Yeah, I got it. Okay. There we go. Last one. So I'm just going to crank these in slowly, a little bit at a time, in a star pattern. So once this is done, we can remove the PTO shaft and we can admire our work. So that is how you rebuild and repair a clutch on a 2110.